Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm Ollie Hayes, and today I'm bringing the player ratings for Liverpool 1, Everton nil. A disappointing Derby Day defeat, which sees our 9-game unbeaten run come to an end at the hands of Liverpool. But yeah, today I'm bringing the player ratings, so we might as well get straight into it with Jordan Pickford. We'll start with Jordan Pickford. He gets a 7 from me. I think he made a few good saves, particularly from Mohamed Salah. There was a cross going to the back post, which Mohamed Salah had a free header, and Pickford got down well to save that. So I think Pickford is showing why he is just a very, very class goalkeeper. I think he shows that he can keep a calm head in the big moments. I think that was one question mark with him, certainly in his early years at Everton, that he couldn't keep a cool head. There was one little incident with Darwin Nunez, which he swiped at him, and somehow Darwin Nunez got booked. I think that was for Nunez rolling back onto the pitch. But apart from that, Pickford, I think he had a decent game. Not going to give him like an 8 or a 9, but I think he had a solid game, made a few decent saves. So it's a 7 from me. So moving into the back four, we'll start with Vitaly Mikalenko at left back, and I think he gets an 8 from me. He kept Mohamed Salah pretty much silent the entire game, which not many fullbacks in the league can say that they've done. Over the years, Mikalenko's a weird one. I think he struggles against wingers that are maybe similar in ability to him, but the likes of Bukayo Saka and Mohamed Salah, he always seems to have a good game against them. He always seems to pick up to the challenge against those kind of wingers. So yeah, every credit to him last night. I think he's really turned a corner under David Moyes, and I thought he was absolutely fantastic last night, keeping Mohamed Salah quiet and had a pretty decent game. But moving into the two centre halves, we'll start with the lower one, and we'll start with James Tarkowski, and he gets a 5 from me. I think early doors to put yourself on a booking like that with a wild challenge against Alexis McAllister. Listen, in my opinion, it was probably a red card. I think even David Moyes has admitted that it probably is a red card. But I think, in a Merseyside derby where you need to keep a cool head at Anfield, he didn't really do that last night. Putting in a wild challenge like that on Alexis McAllister and getting yourself booked and running the risk of a red card, I think was pretty silly in the context of things. So I think maybe 5 is a little bit harsh. I'll probably stick with 5 just because I think for their goal as well, he could probably do a little bit better with the clearance. But that being said, I think he'll probably put it behind him quite quickly because there's every chance that he'll have a fantastic game against Arsenal on Saturday. Like, for example, in the Bournemouth game, he had a pretty poor game in that one in the FA Cup and turned it around pretty quickly within a couple of weeks and put in a fantastic performance in the Merseyside derby at Goodison. So James Tarkowski, he's a professional. He'll put that behind him, but it is a 5 from me. But then moving to his centre-back partner, I'll go with Jared Branthwaite with an 8. He kept us in it at times with some crucial blocks, especially in that first half where Liverpool were creating some chances and upping the pressure, particularly towards the end of the first half. With some fantastic blocks, he kept us in it. He's shown why he is an absolutely fantastic centre half. So, yeah, Jared Branthwaite gets an 8 from me. And then moving to right back, Jake O'Brien, I'm going to give him a 6, just marginally better than James Tarkowski purely because he didn't do anything rash or reckless. I think he just struggled with the pace and power of Luis Diaz's running. Jake O'Brien, he's a big lad. He's a centre back by trade. He's not a right back. So when tasked to defend a tricky winger like Luis Diaz, it was always going to be an uphill battle. But I think he did well in the circumstances. There was a few times that Luis Diaz did get to the byline, but that being said, I think a 6 is probably the right option for Jake O'Brien, considering he didn't do anything wrong. I think he just, in the context of his battle, I think he just did struggle naturally with ability, but not for the want of trying. I think Jake O'Brien's been really professional. He's been, fantastic since David Moyes has come in. So every credit to him, and fingers crossed he can put this, second half of this season to good effect and really kick on next season. But a 6 is probably a fair rating for Jake O'Brien last night. But moving into the midfield three now, we'll start with James Garner, and I'm going to give him a 6. I think he was a little bit disappointed at times. He did break up the play quite well, but in terms of transition, moving the ball from defence to attack, he did kind of go missing a little bit at times. He didn't really create too much. James Garner is that kind of player where you want to see, defence splitting passes, but he didn't really do that last night when he sometimes did have opportunities too. So a 6 is probably about fair for James Garner. And then moving to his midfield partner, Idrissa Gana Gueye, I'm going to give him an 8. I think he was very, very good last night. I think in the context of things, it's a difficult place to go, Anfield, especially in the midfield battle. But I think he controlled that midfield battle quite well. They didn't really have too much of the ball. Szoboszlai and McAllister are two players that really like to have a lot of time on the ball. And Idrissa Gana Gueye at times didn't give them any time at all, any space at all. So I think in the context of the game, I think I'll give Idrissa Gana Gueye an 8. I think he was probably one of our best players on the pitch, along with Jared Brandthwaite and Mikolenko, in my opinion. But moving a bit further forward with Abdoulaye Doucouré, I'm going to give him a 6, purely because I think he just struggled to create anything. I think I probably am I being a little bit too lenient on him with a 6? I'm not so sure. I'll probably stick with a 6 because, at times he did break up the play quite well. He showed that he did have the energy to keep up with Liverpool's midfield. But the chance for Beto, in my opinion, where he slid the ball to Beto, but he actually put the ball behind him. So in moments like that, I think you need a proper defence splitting pass, as I said with James Garner, and at times he did struggle to create anything. So a 6 is probably where I'd go for Abdoulaye Doucouré. And then moving into the front three, we'll start with Jack Harrison, and we'll marginally get better because I think Jack Harrison had a very, very poor game last night. He was creating absolutely nothing. He looked absolutely, terrified to beat a man. So I'll go with a 4 for Jack Harrison, which, may be a little bit harsh. I'm not so sure, but I think a 4 is probably a fair assessment because he was really, really poor in my opinion, especially in that second half where we were backs to the wall. We were trying to fight to get back into the game, and the amount of times that he ran forward with the ball and found a Liverpool defender or just completely messed up the pass was, I lost count by the end, and he was right to be substituted by David Moyes for Iliman and Jai. But then moving to the rest of the front three, moving to Carlos Alcaraz, I'll give him a 7. He showed glimpses of energy. I think there was definitely signs there that he is going to be a top player for Everton. But in a game like Liverpool, it's always going to be tough to create chances. It's always going to be tough to have time on the ball. There were times where his decision making wasn't fully there, but he's still young. He's the right profile of player, so I think that will come with time. But last night, I think a 7 is probably a fair assumption for Carlos Alcaraz. And then moving to Beto. People might not like this. People might say I'm being way too lenient. I'm going to give Beto a 7 as well. A lot of keen viewers of this channel will know that I am a very fond admirer of Beto, but I do think he deserves a 7 last night purely because he worked very hard. He created his own chances a lot of the time. It's not easy as an Everton number 9 going to Anfield. You are very isolated. We've seen it over the years at Merseyside derbies, at Anfield. The likes of Ellis Sims have tried it. Dominic Calvert-Lewin have all tried it and all failed to create chances. And Beto last night, he created 2 of his own chances. Obviously, one hitting the back of the net, but it was offside, and the other one, him hitting the inside of the post. That was the only thing separating him from for an 8 or a 9 was hitting the back of the net there because I think he worked very hard and he was very, very unlucky not to score. But a 7, I think, is probably a fair assumption for Beto last night because I think he had a decent game in a difficult, place to go, difficult circumstances against 2 very big centre halves. I think he had a pretty decent game in the context of things. So fingers crossed he can, keep that going and go into Saturday against Arsenal against another formidable centre back partnership and try and just try and create any chances he can get. But that's completes the starting 11. We'll move into the subs now, and obviously the first sub was Iliman and Jai coming on for Jack Harrison. This one might be a bit harsh, but I'm going to give Iliman and Jai a 5 purely because he was on the longest of all the substitutes and didn't really create anything. But the only reason I'm giving him a 5 is because of his usual high standards. We know what kind of player Iliman and Jai is. You know, in Jack Harrison standards, for example, Iliman and Jai probably would have got an 8 or a 9 last night. But I think a 5 for Iliman and Jai's standards, I think is probably fair. He just looked injured, in my opinion. He didn't look fully fit, and it is difficult having 7 or 8 weeks out of the Premier League. It is difficult to get up to full speed straight away, especially if you come in on as a cameo substitute with 20 minutes to go. It is a difficult thing to do, but he did just look a little bit unfit. He looked injured, and he looked worried to take on defenders, which is something we've not seen from Iliman and Jai. Certainly in his time in an Everton shirt, he looked a little bit worried. I think he was wary of his knee, especially he had strapping on his knee as well. So there is still clearly issues there with his fitness. So fingers crossed he can gradually come back to full fitness because we know what kind of player Iliman Jai is for us. He's absolutely fantastic and he's so important for us going forward. But I think a 5 last night purely because he was on the longest and he didn't really take anyone on, but that was obviously due to his injury and due to his fitness problems. But moving away from that, the next one I'll talk about is Armando Broja. I think I'm going to give him a 6. He didn't really have too much to do, but in the bits that he did do, he created some chances here and there. He twisted and turned and tried to get a shot off wherever he could. He won a corner very, very late on in the game, so there's not really too much to talk about with Armando Broja and Ashley Young as well. I'm going to give him a 6 as well. Purely because there just wasn't really much for them to do in the game. But I think a 6 is probably a fair assessment for them too. But the other sub that I'll talk about is Tim Iroegbunam. He was part of the Broja, Ashley Young, and obviously Tim Iroegbunam triple substitution that David Moyes made. I think I'm going to give Tim Iroegbunam a 7 purely because he looks so assured. He's a young lad and he looks so assured on the ball. There was times where he was under a lot of pressure in the midfield and he was just calm and collected and twisted on it and was able to get the pass off with little to no pressure. And I think obviously it looks better in a game where it's late on because Liverpool's midfield was obviously tiring. But I think Tim Iroegbunam last night, he showed real professionalism in his performance. And that's why I've set him a little bit above Ashley Young and Armando Broja in that one and given him a 7. And then obviously the last substitute was Yusuf Chamiti coming on with about 5 minutes to go. I can't really give him a rating, so I'm going to just put not applicable for that one because he didn't really have many chances at all. I don't think even think he had any meaningful touches on the ball. But that rounds up the player ratings for Liverpool 1, Everton 0 in the Merseyside derby. Obviously, a disappointing one to take, considering we were in the game for large spells of it. But yeah, fingers crossed we can put that behind us and go into the Arsenal game with a little bit of wind in our sails. And fingers crossed we can get a positive result in that one. But let me know your thoughts in the comments about these player ratings. Do you think I've been too harsh on some people? Do you think I've been too lenient on some people? I think people might have something to say about my Beto rating. But nevertheless, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And that's all from me today. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.